Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're here with the vampires. These are more of the landlubbery type than the vampires that we're looking forward to in particular, but they'll have to do for now because they've all I've got access to at the moment. So this is another replay submitted by a community member. This is Aristo Demos, I believe. And yeah, he submitted this replay, going to be taking the vampire count, also known as the vampire landlubbers from here on out, up against the Norskins. Potentially a tough matchup, but I think there are some builds that can work pretty well here. He's gone with a very heavy gooning build with, he's got the Red Duke here, obviously up in the air. El Sif, Raise Dead, Dance Macabre, Invocation of Nehek, very solid spell selection. That's exactly what I usually take. A couple of bats as well. We know Aristo's a big fan of his bats, always hounding me in the comments to bring them. And yeah, we've also got some Crypt Horrors here. This is an interesting pick against Norsca. You don't see Crypt Horrors too often, just because they struggle to be cost effective in a lot of situations, but as kind of a counter pick to Famir here, especially if you're buffing them up with like the Dance Macabre, they could potentially get some pretty decent damage done. So we'll see. Got Graveguard in the front line once again, Skeleton Spearman out to the flanks, a Corpse Cart, Unholy Lodestone, as well as a Mortis Engine. So quite a lot of regeneration and draining power here. For the Norskins, we've got Throg leading the way. He's got a Famir Balefiend, Lord of Fire with Flaming Sword of Ruin, Piercing Bolts of Burning, and Fireball. We've got some Marauder Champions up front, Marauders and Marauder Spearmen out to the flanks, more Marauder Champions, looks like, yeah, a couple of Marauder Hunters with Javelins in the back, Famir with Great Weapons, and yeah, Famir with Great Weapons, and that's pretty much it. So without further ado, let's get the battle rolling. You can see already a Fireball popping off. Probably going to be going after the Mortis Engine rather than the Corpse Cart. It's a much higher value target, and with its relatively low armor, that Fireball actually just did a ton of damage. So very solid stuff. That was probably an overcast Fireball, and it's exactly why you bring that particular spell in this matchup, or for anyone really that can bring Lore of Fire against the vampires. Although I would argue, like for the Empire, for example, you'd probably want to take Lore of Life. Although fire certainly can be useful in many situations, but yeah, you can see this is the power of the Red Duke here. Going to drop a nasty breath attack, does quite a bit of damage to those Marauders, takes down you know, about 9 unit models there, and already going to be summoning up some Skeleton Warriors in the back line. And this is one of the main reasons why I just almost never bring infantry skirmishers against the vampires. Granted, these javelins, the arrows that they do throw in here would do a lot of damage to the Crypt Horrors, but the Crypt Horrors being held back a little bit longer until those javelins can get tied down, and now charging through. We'll be doing some pretty good shock damage in that front line there. You can see Throg trying to hold him back, but the Lodestone especially providing that extra regeneration. And excuse me, now here comes the Mortis Engine, and you can see, looks like El Sif maybe going down on the Balefiend. Nope, not quite yet, but the Red Duke getting very aggressive, diving down right on top of some Famir with Great Weapons with the Balefiend here as well. So potentially a dangerous situation, but we'll see how he does. He's doing some pretty good damage so far, but is also taking a pretty sizable amount of damage. You can see Throg going after the Mortis Engine there. The Norscan player definitely committing a lot of resources to try and take that thing down. Another Fireball, clean miss there, no damage done. But you can see the Crypt Horrors are crumbling despite everything. Still, though, they're getting some pretty good damage done against the Famir. Thankfully, you know, between the various healing buffs here, the Crypt Horror should be able to hold out okay, but now El Sif comes down on the Famir Balefiend, and you can see Red Duke comes in and just does a ton of damage. And this is the Red Duke's main strength, is that El Sif, if we go ahead and have a look here, is a huge debuff. Speed and melee defense in particular, minus 45 melee defense is huge. Just makes the your opposing character's defensive stats very poor. You can do a ton of damage to them very easily, particularly, of course, if the Red Duke's up on the dragon. He has good stats, heavy armor-piercing weapon strength, so I know somebody from Heir of Carthage's Discord server had requested, I believe it was the Colonel, requested I make a video about the Red Duke because he hadn't seen the Red Duke very often in-game, and I thought that was rather interesting. The Red Duke, I find, is a very common pick, but in terms of the overarching view here, you can see the Marauders starting to get worn through. The front line for Norsca is getting very thin, and while the vampire counts have taken a lot of damage, like this Crypt Horror, for example, getting pretty close to its healing cap, the multiple layers of healing buffs just providing enough here. It looks like a nasty breath attack going to be going down, just roasting out some of those champions in the front line, doing a little bit of friendly fire. Looks like it did take down one of those Crypt Horrors, actually. But yeah, this is almost like an old school kind of Game 1 type Death Star army with the multiple healing buffs and Crypt Horrors in particular. You can see Throg comes after the Mortis Engine here. It's almost at its healing cap. Almost has 1 XP chevron, but I've seen Mortis Engines get up to like a silver chevron quite easily in a battle, and a devastating volley of javelins from those Marauder Hunters in the back, and the Mortis Engine goes down. Suddenly things aren't looking terrible, but this is going to be an interesting fight. You know, Throg's got anti-large AP, but the Red Duke on the Dragon has much heavier mass, and the Red Duke can also heal himself. He can also summon some zombies here. I mean, granted, Throg has regeneration as well. Throg's also not immune to psychology. Very interesting point there, but he gets terrified here. You can see the bounce power had been pretty even up until that point, but that puts a pretty severe dagger in it. You can see the balance of power shifting quite rapidly, and a lot of the Norscan units getting routed off there. Red Duke does come back from route, the Frog comes back from route right next to the Red Duke. The Javelins are also doing some pretty good damage to the Red Duke, so I mean, it's not completely out of the woods yet, and so the Red Duke going to go ahead, screen through his own infantry here, and let the zombies and Graveguard kind of distract Throg a little bit there. And if El Sif is on cooldown, it looks like just gets popped there, so that puts Throg down to only 5 melee defense, which means the Red Duke, especially with his charge bonus active on this big charge here, we'll be able to get enough damage done, probably to rout Throg off. Let's see, Throg is wavering, the Red Duke at 1195, Throg with that hit going down to only 90 HP, and he's routed, and it looks like the rest of the Norscan force is very, very tattered at this point. We have a few regrouped infantry here, and the Thamir is still holding out very well. Thamir with great weapons, you'll find, are one of the best units in this matchup. Their heavy armor, anti-large armor piercing makes them very, very good here. But unfortunately, just the war of attrition playing against the Norscans, and I've said it before, the Norscans are not necessarily great at that war of attrition style of play. I find, at least when I play Norsca, I need to win fast, otherwise I will most likely lose, not always, but just as kind of a general sort of guideline, I guess you could say, is that the Norscans don't always do well in attritional style games, so if you can slow down the pace of the game and really just grind it out, you can usually beat Norsca. And looks like Aristo carrying that one. Red Duke contributing quite well. Again, this video is kind of meant to feature him specifically, but 71 kills on him from the breath attacks and everything. Not bad at all. Yeah, Graveguard did quite well also in the front line, cutting up Marauders, obviously. They'll do quite well, even against champions. We can compare their stats 1-to-1 in a minute, but Graveguard will actually trade pretty well there, especially with healing support, obviously, and like Vigor Mortis, for example. The Crypt Horrors actually didn't end up getting that many kills, but just being able to do damage to the Thamir, kind of provide that regenerating frontline monstrous presence. And even if these guys don't get a lot of kills, I mean, their hits disrupt the enemies, so the champions or whatever they're fighting can't get as many swings back, right? And so especially if you have like a unit of Crypt Horrors layered on top of some Graveguard, then the Graveguard will take less damage because the people they're fighting are constantly getting staggered by the Crypt Horrors. So kind of like that synergy there. Norscan player definitely did a good job investing very heavily trying to take down this Mortis Engine. Unfortunately, he just didn't quite take it down fast enough. And of course, the Red Duke just trashing Throg there at the end was really, really rough. Granted, the Red Duke did take a pretty sound bashing there, and he probably also just about got to his healing cap. I didn't notice quite in the end there, but yeah, not too bad at all. And a very good showcase of the Red Duke's power. So what would I say is the Red Duke's lord? Well, he's the Vampire Count's kind of power lord, is what I guess I would call him. Like your Kolek, your Krokar, Karl Franz now is up in that category. I guess Lewin maybe for Bretonnia. There's an argument to be made, not really for Alberic, but just I guess the world beater is another term you might hear them referred to as, but just that high tier monstrous, hard hitting the power lord, right? So that's the Red Duke's role for the Vampire Counts, particularly going after characters with that El Sif debuff. Let's go ahead and remind ourselves one more time. This is the main set piece of the Red Duke. What sets him apart from regular Vampire Lord is this El Sif ability. I mean, in addition to that, he's got pretty comparable stats. He has slightly better combat stats all around. But yeah, the main thing here to look for is that LC ability. Once again, minus 48% speed, so you can catch him. Minus 22% physical resistance, which is not always super useful, but useful against certain targets, certainly that have physical resistance. And obviously, the minus 45 melee defense. The most important part of this, in my opinion, minus 45 melee defense is huge. That will put most characters into, 0 to 20 range, where the Red Duke, with his much higher melee attack, even on the Dragon, he's still got, 48 melee attack. And I believe, I thought he had Frenzy, but maybe not. But anyway, he can get a lot of damage done with that LC up, especially if you layer something like Dance Macabre, like self-buff him with the Dance Macabre to give him even more melee attack. You can almost guarantee a hit on every attack animation, and at that point, with the heavy weapon strength of the Dragon, you're going to be doing a lot of damage. Of course, you have the breaths as well, and being a vampire caster, he has some access to some of the best, most cost-effective spells in the game by far. So typically the loadout I like to run him in is this, with just Invocation of Nehek and Dance Macabre, although certainly Raise Dead is an excellent spell if you have the extra points for it. But yeah, typically you're going to see the Red Duke in this guise. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so that every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.